Hey everybody, what's up? It is Thursday. Hopefully, we're not too laggy. I had a lot of trouble with this on Tuesday. We should be better. I did some test streams yesterday and today to try to improve things. Hopefully, this is one of those improvements. What's going on, everybody? Let me know if you're hanging out in the chat. Like I say, it is Thursday, which means that we're a little later than we normally are. We're streaming at 3 p.m. today rather than 2 p.m. because at 2 p.m. I had a meeting. I had a recording for this very podcast with a special guest that will be debuting in a couple of weeks. If you're not familiar with that podcast is called Monster of the Week, and it's a weekly, semi-weekly show where we pick one monster in the monster manual and we dissect them and talk about how we can improve the monster. It's a pretty simple, casual podcast, but we also pair it with this stream, which is a monster workshop or a monster redesign stream. The conceit here is we take the monster that we talked about in our previous episode, and we try to do the heavy lifting of actually improving the monster and making it more fun. If you haven't checked out the podcast, please do. This episode is extra special because this is an episode that we had a special guest on. We had Jackie Leung, better known as Death by Mage, come on and talk to us about his favorite monster, and that is the Lich. Yes, I don't know why I always still have my headphones in. I'm not listening to anything. The sort of top tier undead, the bone boss, you might say. They are one of the most iconic monsters in D&D, and I was very lucky to have Jackie on. We brainstormed we talked a lot about the history of the monster and the kind of lore and various famous liches in Forgotten Realms' history. But we also talked a lot about ways we could improve the Lich's mechanics, mainly mechanics. There was some lore stuff, but it was primarily about how we can make the 5th edition version of the Lich more interesting. So that's what we're going to kind of break down today. Starting off, we're going to basically talk about what the 5th edition Lich is, and then we will break down 3 different problem areas that I think could use some improvement. These are also things that Jackie talked about, so I kind of have a mix of some of Jackie's suggestions and some of my suggestions in order to make them a little bit more interesting. So let's talk about it. The Lich is a CR21 medium undead. They can be of any evil alignment, and there's some contention on that, whether or not you can have a good or a bad Lich. There have been histories of, in the history there have been examples of good aligned Liches, but, there's the question of the reliquary, and, sort of like drawing somebody's soul into it, isn't that inherently an evil act? Mechanically, though, they have 17 AC, 135 hit points, they have 30-foot speed, they have average strength, good dex, good con, great intelligence, okay wisdom, pretty good charisma. So pretty much great scores. They have good saves, particularly intelligence and constitution. They have a bunch of skills, arcana, history, insight, and perception. They have a bunch of resistances and immunities as an undead. They are resistant to cold, lightning, necrotic. Interesting that they're not immune to necrotic. They are immune to poison, as well as bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. They also have some condition immunities. They cannot be charmed, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned. They have true sight out to 120 feet. They have passive perception 19. They speak common plus 5 other languages, which is pretty cool. And then they have some legendary abilities because they are a legendary monster. They have legendary resistance 3 times per day. They have the famous rejuvenation power, where if they have a reliquary, the destroyed Lich gains a new body in 1d10 days, regaining all its hit points and becoming active again. The new body appears within 5 feet of the reliquary. Spellcasting wise, they are an 18th level spellcasters. This is kind of their bread and butter. They have a bunch of spells, all the way from cantrips like Mage Hand and Ray of Frost, all the way up to Power Word Kill. They only have 1 slot for 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th level, which, could be better, could be worse. Things like Disintegrate, Globe of Invulnerability, Finger of Death, Plane Shift, Dominate Monster, Power Word Stun, and Power Word Kill. They also have turn resistance, which I thought was interesting. They have advantage on saving throws against any effects that turn undead, as opposed to being immune to it. I think turn immunity is often saved for monsters like the, I think it's the Crawling Claw. Basically a monster that the entire encounter would be nerfed if they were turned. I think the Lich, especially if you're getting up to be high levels, the Cleric kind of wants to turn the Lich, and also they have such a good wisdom save, it's unlikely that they're going to be turned. Plus they have legendary resistance, right? So even if they fail, they can use a legendary resistance to succeed on the saving throw. They have 1 action that's not a spell casting, and that's Paralyzing Touch. It's a plus 12 to hit. It's 3d10 necrotic. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw and be paralyzed for 1 minute. and they can repeat the saving throw at the end of each one of their turns. Kind of an opportunity attack, I guess, is really what it's there for. And then they have some legendary actions. They have a cantrip. They can cast a cantrip. They have Paralyzing Touch. They can use the Paralyzing Touch, which costs 2 actions. They have Frightening Gaze, which costs 2 actions. They can basically make one creature have to make a saving throw against fear. And they have Disrupt Life, which costs all 3 actions, and each non-undead creature within 20 feet has to make a con save or take 66 necrotic damage. In addition, the Lich also has some some lair actions and some, I don't think they have regional effects, but I do think they have lair actions. Let me pull that up and we'll take a look at their lair actions. Lair actions. So they've got, they can roll a d8 and regain a spell slot of that level or lower. If they have no spent spell slots of that level or lower, nothing happens. They can target one creature it can see within 30 feet, and it creates this one I like, it creates this kind of tether between them. On a failed save, the Lich takes half damage, and the target takes the remaining damage whenever the Lich is hit. So it's kind of like Warding Bond, but it's presumably against an unwilling creature. And then they have a cool one that they call forth the spirits of creatures that died in its lair. These apparitions materialize and attack one creature the Lich can see within 60 feet of it. The target must succeed on a DC 18 Constitution saving throw or take a substantial amount of necrotic damage, 15 D6 necrotic, or half as much, and the apparitions then disappear. Very cool description, very lackluster turn of events. Great, and that is mechanically how the Lich is expressed in 5th edition. Let's talk a little bit about some of the problems with this design and ways we can make it a little bit more interesting. So my first problem is a thorny one. Hey, what's up, Hunter? My first problem is that the Lich is a spellcaster. Happy Thursday to you as well, Hunter. The Lich is a spellcaster, right? And that is definitely true to its core identity. I think that's something we shouldn't be getting rid of in the Lich. But spellcasting in 5th edition, for monsters, I think is pretty labor-intensive. The conceit is that you have to look at this long spell list, and you have to know individually what each one of these spells is going to do, right? And how many slots they have left, and all the kind of upkeep of doing that. Now, I know this is something that they're planning on addressing in future versions of D&D, but who knows how long that'll be, and who knows how exactly they'll address it, so I thought we could kind of get ahead of that. One thing that Jackie recommended that I think is actually pretty interesting, or Friggs Day, depending on your Norse expert, depending on exactly how much you want to go into the spell casting. The conceit is that Jackie brought up the point that this current Lich that's presented is a wizard. That's kind of the archetypical version of the Lich, but you can also have Liches of various other spellcasting classes. So Jackie recommended that we create alternate spell lists for different versions. So like a divine Lich, for example, that has sort of cleric spells. Or the one I was interested in, which was a primal Lich that has spells from the druid spell list. Things like that, right? That you could have Liches of other spellcasting classes. Obviously the wizard is the archetypal version, but the notion of like creating a space for these other Liches I think is interesting. We might not do that today because that's kind of a labor-intensive thing to do on a stream, but I could definitely see that being included in the Patreon reward, which if you're not already signed up for our Patreon, please do. That's how you get access to all of these monsters. Though I am a little bit behind. I'm still working on the demons from all the way back at the beginning of D, so there's a long backlog to check out if you're because I'm not current, but I am slowly chipping away at the demons and then eventually the devils to get us up to date. Hunter says, agreed, which is impossible without D&D Beyond or mastery of the game. Exactly. If you don't have access to D&D Beyond or the rule books or whatever, in that moment, it can be very difficult to remember exactly how all of these noodly spells work. Some of them should be easier than others, things like Counterspell and Invisibility, if you're a little bit more of experience of a DM. But if you're not, or the Lich wants to use a weirder one, like I don't know how Globe of Invulnerability works off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up. So that's what I mean, right? I think that there's a problem there. So Jackie's idea was to do this separate spell list, which I think that's really cool. It lets you personalize your Lich a lot more. But in order to address the kind of bookkeeping problem of just running a Lich in general, I thought what we might do is we might basically shunt the spellcasting into a sidebar and say, okay, the Liches obviously are incredible spellcasters. All Liches should have access to this, but if you just need to run a Lich in combat, here are a couple of spell-adjacent abilities, right? Things that are magical abilities that the Lich inherently has that sort of mimic or take the place of some obvious spells, right? And this is something I think they're doing with 1D&D in the future, but it's something I wanted to try to iterate on here in our version of it as well. Now, kind of hand in hand with that, our second problem is that I think as an actual spellcaster, the Lich is a little underwhelming, right? You would expect a creature that has existed for untold, centuries, maybe even millennia, right, to have a knowledge and understanding of magic that supersedes a mortal's understanding, right? If you basically devoted yourself to just playing Dungeons and Dragons every day and studying all the rule books for hundreds of years, you would know things and be able to do things within those rules that no ordinary dungeon master could do. I think that's true of a spellcaster like a Lich. I think the Lich should have abilities that challenge and mess with the current understanding of how spells and magic work. The Lich, to me, is beyond the conventional rules of spellcasting. So, I don't know exactly how you would mechanize this, but I like the idea that they can cast multiple spells per turn, or they can concentrate on multiple spells at once, right? That the normal rules don't apply to them because they have studied and done all of this. Now, is that gained through their study and their knowledge? Is that gained through magic items? Who knows? That's another thing I guess I didn't put here on the list of problems, but it's something Jackie recommended as well. And something they even hint at in the lore is that Liches have a tendency to accumulate and collect magic items. So having a long list of magic items that the Lich might have access to, or even incorporating some of those abilities into the Lich's stat block might be a way to go as well. Now, Hunter says you have to be a Lich to run a Lich effectively. Kind of, right? You kind of do have to know all of that stuff. That wasn't necessarily the analogy I was intending to make, but that makes perfect sense. Great, and the last one is a common one that we see here on the show a lot, is that the Lich's legendary and lair actions kind of leave a little something to be desired. I think they aren't the worst, but I do think that there are a couple of them that are a little bit lackluster. In particular, I think the last lair action is the one that summons a bunch of spirits. It does an absolute, bulldozer amount of necrotic damage with 15d6, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's that interesting of a use of this cool description of all the souls that the Lich has captured over its long career. The one legendary action or lair action or whatever that I feel like is missing is some interaction with the Lich's reliquary. I feel like there's this weird thing where obviously you are somewhat incentivized to keep the Lich and the reliquary separate, right? You don't necessarily, the Lich hopefully wouldn't put themselves into a combat where their reliquary is just sitting around near them. Often it's hidden away or it's some secret object or something, right? But to me, I almost think there should be a reward, kind of like, how monsters are more dangerous in their lair, that their CR goes up. I kind of like the idea that the Lich is slightly more powerful if their reliquary is there, maybe only in the sense that they get access to some different lair or legendary actions. I think it's kind of a crime that one of the Liches, maybe it's a lair action because it requires another outside object, that the Lich doesn't try to draw your soul into the reliquary as a lair action. I just think that's the thing that the Lich is known for, right? It's like saying we have a vampire, but it doesn't mechanically drink your blood. It's that's what Liches do, right? Is they imprison souls inside their reliquaries. So why isn't that mechanically expressed here? Again, I don't think you should be stapled to having the reliquary in the room, but maybe again as a sidebar, as an optional variant, you can include hey, here's the reliquary. Now, I have been pretty negative about variants and optional sidebars in previous podcasts and about previous monsters, but one thing that I think I will say about the Lich where I think it works a little bit more is that each Lich should be full of their own idiosyncratic stuff, right? That the notion of someone who has achieved this level of arcane power being a carbon copy of another person who has achieved this level of arcane power is kind of silly, right? They should all have their own unique spells and their own unique powers and their own unique weaknesses, and I think a lot of variant rules is a good way to do that, right? That way you can kind of mix and match and create your own personalized Lich. Hey, what's up, M. Grant? Hunter says, I think adding some type of fear rage ability that they get boosted when their reliquary is in danger or takes damage. That's cool. I like that. If you're going to put it in the room, yeah, maybe there's a lair action where if they can use the reliquary, right? But then there is a legendary action or a reaction where if it takes damage, then the Lich can immediately take some kind of a retributive thing. That would sort of be my suggestion, my way to interpret that. But I think it's a great idea, Hunter. I'm totally down for that. It's a good way to incorporate those two things. So we might end up doing a lot of sidebar stuff today, just because I feel like, again, spellcasting is one of those tricky things, and I feel like the more you can personalize your Lich, sort of the better. So the first thing I want to do... Oh, what's up, David? Thanks for coming, everybody. I was worried that by starting a little bit later, people would think we weren't streaming today, but we are still streaming. We're just getting started an hour later than normal. Thanks for coming, everyone. So I want to start with... the like removing spellcasting and replacing it with spellcasting-like powers. Again, when I say remove, I mean simply relocate to a sidebar. So that way, if you do need to have the Lich pull from this thing, you can, but it's not integral to the Lich's function that you're constantly having to look up all these different spells. So let's go over here to Tetracube and look at our stat block. You know what we might actually do first is brainstorm a couple of ideas for spell-like powers, right, that are adjacent to spells but are kind of have the mechanics of which baked in. We don't want to do too many of them because the stat block will really like balloon out, but we have paralyzing touch, right? I wonder if we give them like you could do like an interesting, well, it shouldn't be recharge, because I think recharge is sort of used for powers that are always good to use but are too powerful to do every round. We do want the Lich to have some element of like utility, right, that they can kind of choose when and where they want to do different things. So it seems to me they should have like spell-like abilities. They should definitely have some kind of an AoE power. They have a melee attack, right, in paralyzing touch. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm typing here. Let me scroll a little more. Some kind of an AoE power, and some of these could be in their legendary actions, right? Like, let's maybe look at their spells and see if we can find a really good one. I'm not opposed to giving them like one recharge power, like a kind of power word kill adjacent recharge power, but yeah, we need some kind of like defensive stuff. So I'm seeing like shield, invisibility, mirror image, right? Animate dead. Ooh, we gotta have some kind of an animate dead power. I like counterspell as a cool ability, like a reaction counterspell. I think is pretty juicy. Again, playing with that idea of that they kind of bend magic. What if we say, rather than saying what types of spells they have, what if we do, or what types of abilities they have? What if we say that they have like a ranged? They have some kind of bonus action thing they can do, right? And then they have a melee attack, a ranged attack, and then like a recharge. So like relatively simple, right? Presumably like a recharge like AoE, you know, a big burst. I kind of think that feels right to me. Oh, and like a reaction as well. So that's a lot, right? But I think if you kill spellcasting, that gives them a lot more space in the stat block to mess around with that. So what do we think are some good, like, melee attack we have? That's paralyzing touch. We don't need another one. Some kind of, like, enervating ray or like, disintegrate or something like that, right? Like, I think a, like, ranged necrotic power, I feel like, makes a lot of sense. Like, enervating ray. Although that's is that a beholder thing? I think that's a beholder thing. But it's like a single target. Ooh, what if you do a mechanic? Yeah, Hunter says, when you say melee attack, are we thinking a touch spell? Could be a touch. I was basically just keeping their paralyzing touch, which is a melee spell attack. They've already got one. I think that works fine. I'm just trying to think of a couple of other options. I wonder if they have like a ray power where they can choose, you know, do they target a single person and then it deals X amount of damage, you know? So it's like, let's say it does, just for argument's sake, let's say that it does 66 damage. Like, that's a lot, but just for the sake of this. So they can target like up to 3 people, right? and they can say, okay, you get 66, and then if you target 2 people, they each get 3d6, right? And if you target 3 people, they each get 2d6. So it's like, it's the same amount of necrotic damage, but it sort of pours out differently depending on how many they target. Oh, interesting. Hunter says, when I think of liches, I kind of think of a blue-black mage going sort of magic. So it might need a lot of control abilities. I think that's cool. Yeah, definitely I could see some counterspell style reactions. I think Paralyzing Touch is control. It would be interesting to try to bake a little bit of control into each one of these. You know what I'm saying? That might be kind of fun. So what's a good, like ranged spell attack you could do? Right, that would be what's a cool like range spell attack you could do that would be control? I'm looking at counterspell, dispel, stun, and dominate person spells. Ooh, like a bonus action dispel magic is kind of interesting. Well, what if instead of dispel magic? I mean, these all feel like reactions to me. But what if we do like what if we do a thing where they can steal spells from other people? So, like, let's say you cast Bless on your party, right? What if the Lich can, as a bonus action, make, like, a spell contest with you? And then if it succeeds, it takes control of Bless. Like, you lose it, and it gains it, right? And so it's this thing that can kind of constantly be like, it's dangerous to cast spells around the Lich. You know what I mean? So it's a thing where like maybe the Lich can try a counter spell, you know, but maybe it only targets certain kinds of spells. So they have to be spells that have durations, because it would be like a bonus action, right? So it couldn't be a reaction. It couldn't be a thing like you could redirect it, but I kind of think it's better if it's almost sort of limited to buffs, right? If it's a reaction, then it's something you could do in response to the casting. I think if it's a bonus action, it's something that you do. Like, it's only targeted at other concentration spells, right? So if I'm concentrating on Bless, the Lich can target it, and I can take it away. You know what I mean? I kind of think that's fun for, like, a bonus action thing. Yeah, exactly. Ooh, Hunter Fox makes a really great point. That is good because the player will already have the spell info ready, so the GM doesn't need to look it up. Yeah, especially at the point at which you're fighting this Lich, you know how your spells work. If somebody does drop a Bless or drops, you know, I'm trying to think of another like concentration spell, Mirror Image, or you know, a Big Beast's Hand or something, the Lich can like grab and corrupt and take it. The Lich can initiate a spell casting contest with a caster currently concentrating on a spell. If the Lich wins, ooh, Break Concentration is a cool name for that. Yeah, I love that. Break Concentration. So maybe it's even like this, because it does feel powerful to just take the spell. If the Lich wins. If the Lich wins, again, we'll get the specific wording in a second, but I think Break Concentration is a great name for it. If the Lich wins, the caster loses concentration. If the caster loses by 5 or more, the Lich gains control of the spell and can target new creatures, and can select new targets for it. The Lich. So we need an ability that basically says the Lich can concentrate on more than one spell at once. I think that's awesome. Good idea, guys. I think we can leave Paralyzing Touch as it is, right? I think Break Concentration is good for control as well, because presumably it's buffs and stuns and things like that, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, ranged attacks. So I like that Ray idea, but I want to find some way to control with it. It could be that there's a set, like as M. Grant was saying, there's like a secondary effect that if you hit with it, then there's some, you know, you're weakened or you're enervated or whatever. It's a little meh, you know. I like the idea of it being more control based. I think Dispelling is interesting, but we kind of already have that with Break Concentration. I was thinking with Recharge, Jackie was talking about the idea of like a cold fire being a thing that the Lich used to have. So I feel like a cold fire blast would be kind of cool, going out in every direction. Let me look up exactly like what that does, if there's anything associated with it, because like Jackie mentioned it, and then I was a very good guest and never looked it up again. Let's see. Cold fire. I can't find much about it. Ooh, Hunter's got an idea. Talk to us. I gotta think of this ranged power yet. Ooh, that's cool. I'm not opposed to that. So Hunter says use the phylactery or the reliquary to absorb souls to recharge abilities. I'm not opposed to doing that. I think that would require the reliquary to be baked into the standard Lich, which it currently isn't. But I could see that being something we put in, right? That like maybe it's legendary actions, right? That like, because if you look at the Demi Lich that we made a couple of weeks ago, had a thing where it had a certain number of like soul gems, and it could crush those gems to get legendary actions. So I wonder if it's a similar thing where like if the Lich manages to absorb a soul into the reliquary, then they get an extra legendary action every round or something like that, right? Like I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that could be pretty cool. I just don't want to force the DM to put the reliquary in the room. Having the reliquary there should make them more powerful, but there's an inherent risk of basically like identifying the item that is the reliquary in the room, if that makes sense. Boy, this ranged attack. Because apart from like stunning or paralysis, I don't know another good control mechanic in D&D. You know what I'm saying? Well, so let's maybe move on. Let's maybe look at reaction. If we do... So what's a way to make Counterspell even nastier? Right? Like if the Lich has this reaction and it's Counterspell, we want it to be a countering-like power, but we don't want it to be just Counterspell, because I think that's a little... We might as well just use it. Counterspell. That's a good way. Frost is pretty good control. Yeah. I know the Lich does cold damage with Paralyzing Touch. I just feel like Frost is a very elemental direction. I want to go more necrotic if we're going to go in one of those directions. I'm not opposed to like this slowing could work. I just feel like saying cold immediately implies it's like a cold caster. No, you're good. Oh, please keep talking, Hunter. I love it. I love all the suggestions. No. I'm just picky sometimes. So like I think slowing is good. I think slowing and like freezing people is similar to paralysis. But I almost want to like decaying the limbs is cool. I almost want to find a different, more because I really like Break Concentration as like a unique way the Lich can achieve control without just relying on an established condition, right? Like that's not a thing I've ever seen a monster do, is steal somebody's spell. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing the Lich should be doing. It should be constantly breaking the rules all the time, right? So like, is there some other way to control a character? There used to be a power in like a condition in 4th edition called Weakened, where they dealt like half damage on attacks. So something like that, where like they're dealing less damage, or they are like a fear ray is wrong, because they do have some fear powers. I just want to figure out like an interesting, unique way, like taking away something that they can't do. Like even like it's a little gnarly, but like the target can't regain hit points or something like that, right? Because it feels necrotic. It's a power we've seen on undead before, but if you hit multiple people with it every round, right, I mean, maybe that's an aura. Maybe it has an aura of undeath. The creatures just cannot regain hit points within a certain radius of the Lich. So you have to move away from it in order to get that. I kind of think that's cool. Like an aura of undeath. Living creatures within X feet of the Lich cannot regain hit points. So, like, if it somehow has the ability to regain hit points, it still can, right? But not living creatures. I think that's cool. I think maybe it's weakening, like necrotic ray. I'm not sure exactly what we'll call it. We'll call it something cooler than that. Because it's kind of a ray of enfeeblement, but if you get really specific and you say like 6d6 damage up to 3 targets on a hit, the target makes a con save. On a failure, they are weakened, dealing half damage on all attack rolls. On all weapon attacks. Yeah, I like that. And then the recharge AoE, I feel like we need some kind of a blast outward that then if it drops you to 0, kills you and raises you as a zombie or a skeleton. Right, classic kind of undead stuff. I think our Death Knight had something very similar. Let me look at that and make sure that we're not double dipping there. I might have to turn on my fan. I'm getting warm. I'm getting sweaty. Let's see. What did we have? Oh, funny. The Death Knight does have a power called Aura of Undeath. Although this is a little different. It says any death saving throw made within 30 feet of the Death Knight automatically fails. When a creature within the aura fails a death saving throw, the Death Knight regains 10 hit points. That's awesome. When a living creature within the aura dies, the Death Knight regains 30 hit points. In addition, all other undead creatures within 30 feet of the Death Knight are immune to any effect that turns undead. That's pretty powerful, honestly. I think Nullify Life was the one we did. The Death Knight drains the life force of all living creatures within 30 feet. All living creatures within the aura must succeed on a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. A living creature takes 35 10d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. In addition, the Death Knight can grant temporary hit points to itself or to any undead creature in the aura equal to half the amount of necrotic damage dealt, distributing the hit points as it chooses. So very much a like undead leader, right? It even has a legendary action called Arise. The Death Knight causes up to 4 corpses within 120 feet of it to rise as skeletons or zombies. These undead obey the Death Knight's commands. So I kind of think the recharge should be a blast out, right? Like in all directions. Not necessarily like a draining, but sort of like an explosion outwards. I'm happy if it deals necrotic. It could also deal cold. I think that's cool that it deals both. So if you happen to have like a resistance to one. A large, like all creatures within X feet of the Lich must make a... What if you do Constitution and Wisdom saving throw? If they fail the con, they take cold. If they fail the wisdom, they take necrotic. If they fail both, something worse happens, right? Ooh, if they fail both, they automatically fail a death save. Fail a death save. I think that's really cool. If this damage reduces the target to 0, they rise as a zombie under the Lich's control in 1 minute. In 1d4 rounds. That's pretty gnarly. That's very gnarly. I love the idea of like you start failing a death save while you're still conscious. It's a mechanic I used a lot in 4th edition. I had these kind of like death dealer monks. They were called the Order of the Undiminished Star. And the idea was that they would, whenever a character came back from, they would basically like this death cult. And whenever anyone came back from the dead, these monks like sought them out and tried to kill them to put them back into death. They were like devoted to the goddess of death. And they had like a 5-point palm exploding heart technique thing where they could basically stunning palm you. And you started to make death saves until you like someone healed you or whatever. You were conscious, but basically you were like having this heart attack. And they like started it on you, right? So I love the idea of being conscious and making death saving throws. If you fail 3 of them, you're still dead, even if you were at full health, right? Yeah, I like that idea. That it somehow like takes a little part of your soul. And maybe we play with that with the phylactery, like, or the reliquary. I like the idea that maybe that's how the reliquary works. Is that you make a con save, and if you fail it, then you take a death saving throw strike, and if you reduce to 3 of those, then you die and are drawn into the thing. I think that's really cool. Let's talk about counterspell. What is this reaction? Do they maybe like... Do they maybe counter the spell and then turn it into a spell slot for themselves? I kind of think that's cool, right? So they grab it and they pull it in, and then they can use it as a spell slot. I'm into that. The Lich counters a spell of, you know, we'll say like 5th level or lower. Oh, what do you got, Hunter? And converts it into a spell slot for themselves. So we'll keep spell casting, not the spell list, but just the concept of it in there, and then put the spell lists in different sidebars, and you can choose which one you want. That way you could go and like look up the spells beforehand, make sure you have them ready to go. We'll have to change the name of Aura of Undeath because that's a little too close to the Death Knight. I like the idea of like another ability as well that gives them a couple of extra stuff, right? But let's see. Let's get in here. Okay, I did want to make them immune to necrotic. I think it's weird that they're just resistant to it. They are immune to necrotic. Why would they just be resistant? That's very strange. All the rest of that I think is fine. And then let's get in here. Let's see. If liches don't use spells, then is the player going to be able to counterspell their abilities or dispel their abilities? Probably not. I mean, I don't think that they would be able to dispel some of their abilities, but I do think we're going to keep spell casting in the stat block. We just aren't going to have the big list of spells. I think that's going to be in a sidebar. So, like, they do have the ability to cast spells, but these powers are not spells. These are just inherent abilities that the Lich has, right? I think Dispel Magic could still conceivably work, right? Because it's like, I think Dispel Magic says it's like magic effects in addition to spells. It's a good question, though. Dispel Magic 5e. God, I have that stupid Korn song stuck in my head. Choose one creature, object, or magical effect within range. Any spell of third level or lower on the target ends. For each spell of 4th level or higher on the target, make an ability check using your spellcasting ability. And blah, 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 right? The DC equals 10 plus the spell's level. So I think maybe we'll put that in the spellcasting thing, right? That, like, their powers have certain levels, right? I think that's cool. Okay, so Legendary Resistance we keep, Rejuvenation we keep. I do want to change the term here. I like Reliquary. There are other ones you can go with, but that is my preferred. Yes, it does. My brain just went, it has the juice in my brain. Great. That is ability. There we go. As a Reliquary. Okay, so we need a name for this aura. I don't want to call it Aura of Undeath because I think that's too, it is literally the same name as the Death Knight one. Here, I'm going to grab my fan and get it going because I am a little bit sweaty. I might refill my water, get my fan. While I'm gone, if y'all want to think of a new name for my Aura of Undeath, that would be great. I got to think of one. I'm not always good at names in the moment, and I'm also very picky about names. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me? Yeah. It does have the juice. That's true. Okay, so we'll come up with the aura name in a little bit. I'm just going to say living creatures within, what, 30 feet? Yeah. Living creatures within 30 feet of the Lich cannot regain hit points. Nice and simple. Aura of Undeath. I like that. Okay, that's an ability. And that goes up here. I mean, we could still call it Aura of Undeath, but I feel like let's try to get more unique original names if we can. And then we wanted to, yeah, break concentration. I love this one so much. Break concentration. As a bonus action, the Lich can target one creature. Let's see. Can target one creature within 30 feet that is concentrating on a spell. We're going to push that to 60 feet. That is currently concentrating on a spell. The Lich, and force them to Lichy aura. You got it. There it is. And force them to make a DC. What is their spell save? DC. DC 20. Oof. DC 20 spell casting check. If they fail, the spell is dispelled. If they fail by 5 or more, the Lich becomes the new caster of the spell, or gains control of the spell, and can choose new targets for it. Okay, that is a really nasty power. I love it. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, that's going to go here. We want to keep rejuvenation. We're going to change spell casting. The Lich has the Lich can choose from one of 3 different spell lists. See below. Okay, that is going to be in addition. Here, we're going to call this, yeah, spellcasting. That's going to be an ability. We're going to say Eldritch Exemplar. I think that's a cool thing. The Lich can cast multiple spells per turn, provided it has the actions for them. The Lich can also concentrate on multiple spells at once. Concentrate on a number of spells. Can concentrate on up to 3 spells simultaneously. The Lich can cast multiple spells per turn, provided it has the actions for each. The Lich can also concentrate on up to 3 spells simultaneously. Let's see. What was I gonna say? I had one more thing. I think that's good for now. We can always come back in and put in more stuff if there are more rules we want to break. It can attune to multiple items. In addition, the Lich can attune to up to 5 magical items at once. There we go. Love it. I think that's all correct. It's got a lot of powers, y'all. Okay, let's start putting in those actions. We wanted to have a reaction. It's got paralyzing touch. I need a better name for Necrotic Ray. Necrotic Necrotic. Ray of the Grave. Let's see. So this is a ranged spell attack, intelligence. I'm going to say Necrotic Ray for now. Necrotic Ray. I was just thinking, Hunter, I was going back through an old stream because I was looking for something that we had done. And I think it was the Spined Devil, which is the one where we added the power that it can hit you with its spines, then it can teleport to anyone who's been currently impaled. And I remember thinking about what that name should be. I think it was your suggestion to call it the Passage of Pain, which I think is awesome. I think we need more of that, right? We need more like heavy metal death saves type shit. Okay, so the range on this is going to be 90 feet, up to 3 targets. Up to 3 targets. Hit 66. The target makes a con save. On a failure, they are weakened. So it's 66 necrotic damage. Six d6. Yeah, Passage of Pain. I really like that one. 66 necrotic damage if targeting 1 creature. 3d6. Oh yeah, no worries. The aura just says that living creatures within 30 feet of the Lich can't regain hit points, is what the aura does. So it's not actually as powerful as the Death Knight's aura, but it's similar. So yeah, aura of something, right? Like aura of death, I feel like is the other one, but aura of like rot or aura of entropy or something like that, right? That like you will bleed out regardless. Like you can't, like radiant magic doesn't work in that area, or healing magic doesn't work in that area. 66 necrotic damage if targeting 1 creature. 3d6 necrotic damage if targeting 2 creatures. 2d6 necrotic damage targeting 3 creatures. On a hit, aura of half-life. That's interesting. On a hit, the creature must make a DC 20. Is that what the Paralyzing Touch one is? DC 18. DC 18 Constitution saving throw, or it's not. You want to say poisoned or become weakened, A weakened creature deals half damage on weapon attacks. Okay. Become weakened for 1 minute. Creature deals half damage on weapon attacks and can end the effect on itself with a successful save at the end of its turn. End of its subsequent torpidity. Interesting. Subsequent turns. It might just need to be aura of necrosis. Might be the way to go there. I like torpidity, though. Torpidity to me implies that it's slowed. Though torpidity is a fucking great word. Necrotic Ray. Okay. We need one more action. Torpid Presence. Ooh, Presence is cool. Necrotic Presence, Unnatural Presence. Now I gotta do this. I was gonna do more stats, but now I gotta figure out this name. Necrotic is so overused, but it's such a good word. Necrotic synonym. I don't hate Torpid, but lethal, fatal, destructive, malignant. What about malignant presence? Aura of malevolence, aura of malignance. I like malignant because it's so like medical. You know, like it is dangerous to stand near them. Aura of malignancy. I might do that. Aura of malignancy. Yeah. Spooky. Cool. We need the Cold Fire Blast. Eldritch Exemplar, Legendary Resistance, Rejuvenation, Spellcasting, Turn Resistance. Malignant Presence feels like a haunting. Yeah, it feels like there's a ghost in the room, right? So what is the Cold Fire? Cold Fire Vortex is what I'm going to call it. Cold Fire Vortex. Recharge 6. Aura of Halting Life. Ooh, Aura of like Stilled Life. Aura of Halting is interesting. Aura of... I mean, Aura of... I guess Unlife is just undeath, right? We're close. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. Nullify life. Okay, so let's see. The Lich blasts out with Cold Fire in a 30-foot radius. All creatures in a 30-foot radius. All creatures. Let's see. The Lich blasts. I like blasts out with Cold Fire. Yeah. Cold Fire Vortex is very 80s metal. I think a lot of Lich names should be like Iron Maiden album titles. A lot of Lich like ability names, right? Like definitely 80s. Like something you would see painted on the side of a van. You know what I mean? Like that to me is the brand of the Lich. Blast out with Cold Fire in a 30-foot radius. All creatures in the area. All living creatures in the area must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. Must make both a DC 18 Constitution Wisdom saving. Must make both. Must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. And a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw. A creature that fails the Wisdom save, or the Constitution save takes Constitution save, takes, what do we want to do, 4d6? The total then is 8d6, which I think is okay, yeah. 8d6 cold damage. A creature that fails the Wisdom save, on a failed Wisdom save, on a failed Wisdom or Constitution save, the creature takes 46 cold damage, half on a success, and takes half. Half on a successful save. A creature that on a failed Wisdom save, the creature takes 46 necrotic damage. Half on a successful save. A creature that fails both saves. Also fails one death saving throw. A creature reduced to 0 by this damage. A creature reduced to 0 by this damage dies and rises as a skeleton, as a zombie or a skeleton under the Lich's control in 1d4 rounds. There you go. Cold Fire Vortex. Okay. This stat block is getting fat. This is a fat block we got right here. Oh, it's pretty even. Oh, we gotta do the counter spell. Shoot. Counter spell. So we don't want to call it counter spell. We want to call it like commandeer spell. Like what's a good word for like steal, right? Like boost. Commandeer technically means like a higher ranked person takes command of it. Like it's often used for like PHAT. You're exactly right. Thick block. Requisition, appropriate, seize spell, I think is interesting. Hijack spell. Usurp spell. Confiscate spell. Fat Lactory. Get out of here. Get out of here. I like confiscate spell. You can't be trusted with this. And it has a counter confiscate. That would be a reaction. The Lich. When a creature attempts to cast a spell, you like usurp spell. I like confiscate spell, but usurp is a little more epic. Usurp spell. When a creature, that kind of feels like break concentration. Maybe it should be called usurp spell, but I think we'll keep it here. When a creature casts a spell within 30 feet, we'll say, of the Lich. And what's the range and counter spell? We should make it the same. I was looking up the definition of like a thesaurus for counterspell. That is not what we want. What is the range on counterspell? $60 feet. Okay, yeah. Cast a spell within 60 feet. Insidious. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Usurp spell. When a creature casts a spell within 60 feet of the Lich, it can spend its reaction to force the caster to make a DC 20 spellcasting check. We'll say a DC 18 spellcasting check. Spellcasting check. If they fail, the spell is dispelled. If they fail by 5 or more, the Lich can choose to either regain a spell slot of the same level or immediately cast the spell, choosing a new target. Great. That is a reaction. This is a nasty monster, y'all. This shit is nasty. Okay, that's everything except for the legendary actions. I like that we're like, spellcasting is too complicated. Let's blow the stat block up. But it's a Lich! It's a Lich! It's like one of the most iconic villains in all of D&D. Come on. I actually don't think it is that complicated to run, though, in all honesty, right? If you think about it. So it's got the aura, right? Every round, it's got the bonus action option to break concentration on someone else's spell, right? And then it either does Necrotic Ray as its action, or Cold Fire Vortex if it's recharged, right? And then it has its reaction to usurp spells. Or it chooses to cast something from its spell list, right? I actually don't think it is that harder to run. You know, you've got a couple of reliable powers that you know how they work every time. And then if you want to splash in spell casting, you can do that instead, right? Or in addition to. So let's look at these legendary actions. Yeah, you're exactly right, Hunter Fox. He's on the cover of the DMG. Like, let's go nuts. Let's get out of here. So I think these are a little bit boring. Because like now with Cold Fire Vortex, we don't really need Disrupt Life. We don't really need Cantrip. I kind of think that's boring. It's a legendary action. Because like, what are the Lich's cantrips as written? They are Mage Hand, Prestidigitation, Ray of Frost. Great, it's going to cast Ray of Frost, everybody. Oh dear. I mean, like, presumably it would be a higher level version of Ray of Frost, but still, that's pretty boring. So we want, it's the lair actions I kind of like, except with one exception. Oh, we wanted to put a legendary action in here about the Reliquary. But again, I think that's secondary. I think that's an addendum you attach, right? I don't think that that's baked into the actual Lich. Like, I don't like any of these. Frightening Gaze and Disrupt Life are at least unique, but Disrupt Life to me is so similar to Coldfire Vortex that we don't need it. You know? I wonder if Disrupt Life is a better name for Aura of Malignancy. I kind of wonder if that's better. Nah, Aura of Malignancy is like cooler and more metal. There's something very D&D about Disrupt Life. But I don't want to do Paralyzing Touch as a legendary action. I don't care. Like, that's not that much fun. I want unique things. I don't hate the idea of them casting a spell. I mean, what if spell casting is entirely in their legendary actions? What if legendary actions are where the spell casting lives? So it's like, they have a set number of legendary actions, and each round, it costs 1 action to cast a spell of like 2nd level or lower, and it costs 2 actions to cast a spell of like 5th level or lower, and it costs 3 actions to cast a spell of like 7th level or lower, right? I kind of think that's more interesting, because then a lot of their that's where you can do your spell casting. The Lich can still do its round of stuff, right? And then it can do its legendary actions over here. I mean, you could also flip it and say the spell casting is their actions, but I think having more bespoke things as their normal actions and things more likely to be seen, that's my instinct, is to say, like, maybe those levels are too high. Maybe it's like 1st level is 1 action, and then 3rd and below is 2, and 5th and below. It doesn't go to 7th. That could be pretty crazy. Let's maybe keep it below 5th. No, I mean, like, I guess that's true. Hunter makes the point that, like, I mean, it wouldn't be any spell. It would be from their spell list, right? You'd have a spell list that's a separate thing. My point is just that, like, we wanted to decouple the spell list from the Lich anyway. Right. It would still be on the list, so the conceit is still you need to use it. But I think you're right, Hunter, that, like, if the point of this Lich is to say that spell casting is optional, right, that they can do it but they don't have to, then these legendary actions can't be spells, because then that means you have to know the spells in order to make it functional, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. I do think it's a cool idea, and it's something I want to see in a monster someday, like an arch wizard where they're spell casting, like all the legendary actions are spell casts, or like different spells. I think that's cool, but I think it is against the purpose of the Lich that we're trying to do. So we know that the, like, reaction to the reliquary being damaged is a legendary action, but that is only in the version where the Lich has their reliquary on hand. So we're going to save that. So we need to think of a couple more things. Frightening Gaze, I think, is fine, but I think it's... thank you for catching that, Hunter. I think that would have been a mistake to do that, because we would have just been back to square one with spellcasting. It is a cool idea, but it goes against what we're doing right now. So how do we think of new ideas here that are, like, more interesting than what we have? Don't want to do a cantrip. I don't really like legendary actions that replicate existing actions. I understand that that's simpler, but it's a little boring. So I don't really like Paralyzing Touch, and we can't do cantrip because it's relying on the idea of spellcasting being there, which it's not. So let's at least kill those two. There's some version of Frightening Gaze that I think is fine. What if we do an aging power? I always like aging powers, and I feel like the Lich being sort of like immortal is an interesting idea, right? Like Withering Gaze instead of Frightening Gaze. Because the Demi-Lich has, like... Ooh, that's interesting. Create 1 mirror image of the self. Maybe you do a thing where it's like... Yeah, that's cool. What if it's like a mirror image? We could call it another name, right? Duplicate self. I think aging is also cool. We should do both. But what if the mirror image one is that it creates a duplicate for the number of legendary actions you spend? So you could make 2 for 1. You could make 1 copy for 1 legendary action, 2 copies for 2, and then 3 copies for 3. So if the Lich is really in trouble, they could make 3 copies on 1 round. Or if you forget at the end of, the round. This happens to me a lot with legendary actions, where at the end of the round I forget that I haven't used any of them. Yeah, I think aging is more appropriate than Frightening Gaze. The question is, what does the aging do besides just age you, right? Because if you're an elf or a dwarf, that doesn't really matter. The aging has to be kind of like incidental. So let me look at the fucking let me look at the ghost, because the ghost does aging. Because it's like horrifying visage or something that the ghost has. Yeah, I'm glad you like that idea, Hunter. That's good. That's how I know it's good, when somebody else likes it. Ghosts. Okay. So that is a fear effect. It's a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw. Be frightened for 1 minute. If the save fails by 5 or more, the target also ages 1d4 times 10 years. The frightened creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns. So, is it still a frightening effect? It just has the aging. I kind of want it like to weaken you, right? That like you age like a lot. You know what I mean? We have weakening. Is it like... Is it functional? I'm thinking about slow. So slow is a little complicated, but it does this thing where it gives you a bunch of like nasty effects. So like slow, if you fail the save, wisdom saving throw. An affected creature's speed is halved. It takes a -2 penalty to AC and dex saves, and it can't use reactions. On its turn, it can use either an action or a bonus action, but not both. And then it can't make more than 1 melee attack during its turn. So we don't need all of those things, but that kind of, to me, reads as old age. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like it withers them. They get some or all of those effects, right? Ooh, exhaustion? That's it. Yep. Fuck slow. It's exhaustion, because exhaustion is a monster. Yes. Yep. If they fail, they age X amount and they gain a level of exhaustion. So if they get hit with it multiple times, they keep aging and they keep gaining a level of exhaustion. That's awesome. Yeah, exactly, Hunter. That would be brutal. Totally brutal, right? So that's got to be at least 2 actions, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, cool. So I like Withering Gaze because it's already a phrase in the English language anyway. Withering Gaze costs 2 actions. And man, listen, they're at 20th level. You've got Lesser Restoration. You've got Greater Restoration. Bust it out. Like, this is the time for it. You know what I mean? We're not pulling any punches here. Okay, so let's actually just get in here and edit this one. Call it Withering Gaze. Withering Gaze. Yeah, it's exhaustion. Good call. The Lich fixes its gaze on one creature it can see within... So this is short range, so within 10 feet of it, that's fine. The target must succeed on a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw against this magic or become... or gain 1 level of exhaustion. Exhaustion. The frightened target can repeat the saving... Or the exhausted... Nope, they can't repeat it. In addition... The creature ages 1d4 times 10 years. The aging effect lasts as long as the exhaustion does. Let's keep this. If the saving throw is successful, the target is immune to the Lich's gaze for the next 24 hours. I think that's fine to keep. That's a legendary action. Yup. Now, I don't want to call it, I don't want to call it a comeback. No, I don't want to call it mirror image. So maybe it's like duplicate self. God, that could get really gnarly. So it's still an illusion, right? Like it's not a real version of the Lich. It's not like an actual, because I was thinking about like Split, you know, like the ooze, but then the action economy of that gets pretty silly because you could just keep doing it forever and ever, right? So I like duplicate self. But mirror image is already a pretty complicated spell, so I want to make sure we don't like overburden this this legendary action. So So let me look at mirror image. I think it's good to have a defensive one. I think this is a really fun, interesting way to do it. So I'm dedicated to doing it. It's just a question of how do we mechanize it. An illusory duplicate of the Lich appears in their space until the spell ends. For each time the creature attacks you with a spell during the spell's duration, roll a d20. An illusory duplicate. An illusory duplicate of the Lich appears in its space. For each legendary action spent, an additional duplicate appears. A Lich can only have 3 duplicates at a time. Whenever enemy. So it's basically just mirror image. But each time a creature attacks you with an attack during the spell's duration, each time a creature attacks the Lich while it has a duplicate, roll 1d20. If it has 3 duplicates, the Lich must hit higher than a 6 to... Yeah, Hunter says, I know you don't like Frost, but if you want a different defensive legendary action, you could have the Lich embed themselves in ice to increase their AC. Like, I'd rather just have like a magical shield than ice. And I've done that on the dragon before. 3 duplicates at a time. Each time a creature attacks the Lich while it has a duplicate, roll 1d20 on a... Yeah, it's just so much text for mirror image. I'm trying to think if there's like a simplified way to do it. Oh yeah, Warcraft definitely has some cold Liches for sure. And like, that's cool. If you want to do a cold Lich, that's awesome. Go for it. Nothing is stopping you. But I feel like for the standard Lich, you want to keep it a little more generic. A illusory duplicate of the Lich appears in its space. For each legendary action spent, an additional duplicate appears. The Lich can only have 3 duplicates at a time. Each time a creature attacks the Lich while it has a duplicate, roll 1d20, 1d6, 1d20. On a 5. If the Lich has 3 duplicates, yeah, I don't know how to like reverse engineer this to have it be shorter and simpler. I like the idea of a defensive one, and I think Duplicate itself has like a nice Saturday morning cartoon kind of like vibe to it, but I worry that the word count on it is going to get so unreasonably huge that it's not going to be feasible, you know. The Lich can create duplicates of itself, and then whenever it's attacked, roll a d20. I mean, you could just say it costs 3 actions, and just say that if it, but then you still need the wording for if it has 2, because they would slowly chip it away, right? Yeah, I think that might be too complicated for a legendary action. Mirror Image is already a really complicated spell. Like, there's something elegant about its design, especially with the extra duplicates. I want to make it work, though. Makes an extra copy of itself. What if you say the Liches, like, what if they are independent? Like, they share a pool of actions and legendary actions, right? But they can run around, you know what I mean? Like, but if they share a pool of actions, then does that really help the Lich to split themselves into 4 parts? Do you know what I mean? If you kill one, does it kill all 4 of them? It doesn't really benefit the Lich at all. And the nice thing about mirror image is that, like, you as the GM don't need to know which one is the true one. Like, if you actually split the Lich into 4 copies and they run around, it's also just like, it's like so multiplicity. It's like not really the theme of the Lich. Okay. Unfortunately, I think we have to lose Duplicate Self. I think it's cool and it's a good idea, but I don't know how to mechanize it in a way that isn't like its own novel in the monster stat block that's already huge. Okay, so we need we need a defensive one then. I don't love ice, but I do think something about encasing themselves or like a magical shield or something like that, right, is cool. I know there's a spell called Anti-Life Shell. Anti-Life Shell. A shimmering barrier extends out from you. It's a 5th level spell. Remaining centered on you. Barrier prevents an affected creature from passing or reaching through. An affected creature can cast spells or make attacks with ranged or reach weapons through the barrier. Yeah, okay. A little boring. Basically the globe of invulnerability, right? Defensive. What if it's similar to Disrupt Life, and that it like raises a host of spirits around the Lich, right? And then like when you attack, you're actually hacking. So it's basically just giving itself temporary hit points, right? But when you attack the Lich, you're kind of hacking through the like ghostly versions of the Lich. I think that's cool. So it's basically the ice idea you had. Wouldn't increase their armor class, but it would give them temporary hit points. Let's see. So, Ghost Shroud. The Lich shrouds itself in ghostly apparitions, gaining, what do we think, like 4d6 temporary hit points. How do you spell apparitions? Apparitions. Shrouds itself in ghostly apparitions that protect it against attacks. Until the start. No, because then you have to remove those. They're protected against attacks. Shrouds itself in ghostly apparitions, gaining 46 temporary hit points. What about summoning a number of spirits, and then when one is killed, the Lich heals? Ooh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. The Lich summons 1d4 plus 1. How would you... Are they specters? Yeah, maybe they're specters. It would require you to pull up the specter thing. I kind of like them being like useless. Like they don't do anything, right? They're just kind of there and they just hover around. Summons 1d4 plus 1 harmless apparitions. Yeah, minion-esque. Boy. Ghost summons 1d4 apparitions. Like, I like them being minions, apparitions. But then you would need to, like, have the whole stat block of, like, they have this much armor class, and this is their wisdom save. Like, they have to be, like, relatively simple to like, explain here, right? The Lich summons 1d4 plus 1 apparitions. Each apparition is harmless, like cannot move from its space. Because what I like the idea of is that like it would fill the space around it, right? So the Lich like summons in 5 or 6 of these things, they float there, and then is continuing to wage war, and it can either kill them itself to get the hit points, or if you do like a fireball at the Lich, then it kills all of those, and the Lich actually gains health from that, right? Like, because I don't hate the idea of making minions, but then you need to like pull up the stats for minions, right? Like you can't run, like, I wonder if it's easier just to do specters, because then that's at least an existing monster, right? And you can also just avoid this legendary action if you don't want to use it. If you don't have specters to hand, you can just avoid the legendary action, right? At this point, a specter is like CR 22. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you can probably handle running them. And like, they can probably, not, sorry, CR 22, it's got 22 hit points. Ooh, if the player moves through the spirits, they can take damage. I think that's really cool, actually. Maybe that's what it is. Summons a shroud of spirits. But you still need to be able to attack them, right? And it would still require like a grid, right? Because you have to assume that this is theater of the mind. Like, these are great ideas. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do you translate this into like D&D text? Summons 1d6, 1d4 plus 2 apparitions. 1d4 apparitions. 1d4 plus 2. So the most you have is 6. The fewest you can have is 3. Their health is 5. Yeah, let me try it. Let me see how big it gets, because I'm worried that's going to be a lot. Yeah, because, I mean, that you can do. You can say that, but then what about Fireball, right? What's their dex save? You know, what about their, are they immune to poison? You know what I'm saying? Like, it starts to, like, the moment you say there's a creature in here that's contained entirely in the stat block, like, I think if you treat them like items, that could work, because those tend to have, like, they have 10 hit points. You're not wrong. I want to get this, but this is the thing, right? It's like, how do you mechanize that? Because items do this too, where they're like, if you want to kick down a door, it's like, you know, it's got AC 11 and 4 hit points. It's immune to psychic and poison damage. So I feel like that's not that much. Like, you probably get that in there. But I'm worried about, like, placement, you know? Summons 1d6 plus 2 apparitions in spaces within 30 feet of the Lich. These apparitions cannot move and cannot attack, but when a living creature passes through their space or ends their turn within 5 feet of one, they take 5 necrotic damage. The apparitions, and you just take it. The apparitions, I cannot spell that. I don't understand. Apparitions have AC 10, 5 hit points, and are immune to psychic, poison, and necrotic. Immune to necrotic and poison damage, because they can take psychic damage, sure. Necrotic and poison damage. When an apparition dies, the Lich regains 10 hit points. Is that enough? Summons a number of apparitions. So what if we do this then? If the Lich summons 1d4 plus 2 apparitions, if the Lich spends, or for each additional legendary action the Lich spends, the Lich spends on this, with this power, it can summon another 1d4 plus 6 apparitions. So you could make the, like, you could make the whole map like a maze, right? It's pretty tactical in terms of, like, that's not too bad. Let's look. Yeah, that's pretty much the same length as the Fear one, a little longer. So let's just make sure this, whatever this Disrupt Life one is relatively short, and then we should be good, right? Yeah, there we go. We just had to figure it out. Nice job, Hunter. Thanks for the suggestion. Apparitions in spaces within 30 feet of the Lich. These apparitions cannot move and cannot attack, but when a living creature passes through their space or ends their turn within 5 feet of one, they take 5 necrotic damage. The apparitions have AC 10, 5 hit points, and are immune to necrotic and poison damage. When an apparition dies, the Lich regains 10 hit points. For each additional legendary action the Lich spends with his power, it can summon another 1d4 plus 2 apparitions. I can just, you could totally cover the board, right? I could just also see, like, my 4th edition brain. No, it's not all me. It was your idea. How about you summon, what about summon a number of spirits, and then when one is killed, the Lich heals? That was all you, dude. Get out of here. And then, so we need one last one. Probably the 3 actions one, and it's gotta be, pretty simple, right? We already have a summoning, so I have Ghost Shroud. I don't want that. I like Maze of Labyrinth of Souls. I like Labyrinth of Souls. God, I made myself spell the word labyrinth. Why? Why labyrinth? Labyrinth. Souls. That's its new name. It's a legendary action. So we have a summoning power, but we don't have a like fucking necromancer, you know, like raising the dead power. Is there a legendary action where the Lich can point at a dead character and turn them into a slightly more powerful undead? You know what I mean? I kind of like that. What if it's animate ally? The Lich points to a dead creature, to a creature that died within the past minute, to a creature that died within the past minute, to a humanoid that died within the past minute. That humanoid arises as a white under the Lich's control. Costs 3 actions. So if you die near the thing, they can just spend their thing and you're up. You're a white. You're mine now. So you'd have to bust out the white, but that would be a pretty specific situation. Is that the Lich? We got it. Look at that. It's a massive stat block, but it's the Lich. We've got Aura of Malignancy, Break Concentration, Eldritch Exemplar, Legendary Resistance, Rejuvenation, Spellcasting, Turn Resistance, Paralyzing Touch, Necrotic Ray, Coldfire Vortex, Usurp Spell, Labyrinth of Souls, Animate Ally, and Withering Gaze. Oh, let's swap the order there. I always like to go in order of actions, how many it costs. Yeah, there we go. I think that's cool. Lots of different stuff in there. So we have about half an hour. I want to quickly look at lair actions and stuff. We want to talk about the reliquary as well. Okay, so lair actions. I think that the first 2 are decent. And I think we can keep the last one. I just want to juice it a little bit. Make it a little more interesting. So, one of the lair actions is the Lich rolls a d8 and regains a spell slot of that level or lower. If it has no spent spell slots of that level or lower, nothing happens. So that's actually kind of dumb. Especially if we're trying to decouple spell casting from the Lich. So we might need to do a different one. I like this next one. The Lich targets one creature it can see within 30 feet of it. A crackling cord of negative energy tethers the Lich to the target. Whenever the Lich takes damage, the target must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the Lich takes half the damage rounded down, and the target takes the remaining damage. This tether lasts until the initiative count 20 on the next round, or until the Lich or the target is no longer in the Lich's lair. I think that's cool. We can keep that one. Now, the last one is frustrating. This is the 15d6 necrotic damage. So it is funny that they're summoning forth apparitions. Materialize and attack one creature that the Lich can see within 60 feet of it. The target must succeed on a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, taking X amount of necrotic damage on a failed save. So I kind of want that to be like a bunch of attacks. So let's do replace the last one, the final lair action, with the final layer action. Yeah, let's go like final layer action. Targets multiple people, a flood of spirits on a failure, like for less necrotic damage, deals less necrotic damage, and on a failure of 5 or more, the target is charmed, is possessed. It's possessed or charmed, basically mechanically. Possessed, charmed by the Lich. You know, for 1 minute or until they drop unconscious. Yeah, that's cool. So we need a different one for the first one. We don't want them to regain a spell slot. Something cool about a magic item that the Lich might have, or could recharge its cold fire aura, something like that, right? But it's not very lair adjacent. I kind of like being magic item related, like the Lich summons a magic item, see below, to its hand. That like it pulls something off the shelf or whatever, right? Like, and then you just list a couple of magic items that the Lich has, right? Like it's got the scroll of, you know, Urumbar or whatever. Like, I like the idea that it can cast spells from the weave though, instead of a magic item, because I feel, again, it feels very like you're limited by what magic items it has on it. That's like something that Jackie specifically brought up, is like we should give them some magic items that they can use. But it's like an action economy problem, right? Like, I wonder if you do this, like summons a magic item, or like the Lich produces a scroll, and immediately casts the spell. Choose one of the following effects. Like, the Lich turns invisible for 1 minute. The Lich flies. You know, flies. Gains a fly speed. The Lich... they should all be like things that affect the Lich and not things that affect the party, because then you don't need to make saving throws, right? Like fly, invisibility, or when they lose their trash mobs, they get some allies to help them out. Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I like that it's like, I like this being utility, right? That it's like, okay, I need the Lich to go invisible. I need the Lich to fly. I need the Lich to do this, right? Like the Lich has some other spell effect we can quickly replicate. We can quickly replicate here. You know what I'm saying? That it's like, I like that it's a scroll. They just pull the scroll off them, read it, then this thing happens. They don't even necessarily have to be spells. They can just be like weird abilities, and we don't understand what that was a scroll of. Okay, I think that works, and then I want to really quickly do the reliquary stuff. So if they have the reliquary, then one of their layer actions is the Lich can open its reliquary and attempt to pull a creature inside. Yeah, this is very imprecise language. Attempt to pull a creature inside. That creature must make begins to make death saving throws. Death saving throws. At the end of each of the creature's turns, they make a death saving throw. Once they have accumulated 3 failures, They die, and their soul is pulled and becomes trapped within the reliquary. Becomes trapped within the reliquary. Only if the reliquary is closed, an action that deals necrotic damage to the person closing it or destroyed, does the creature, or can the creature stop making the throws, right? Saving throws. Okay, and then legendary action attached to that. Maybe it's a reaction. Yeah, I think it's a reaction. I like a fear effect here. Fear the reliquary. I almost want to say fear the phylactery, but we shouldn't say that word anymore. Fear the reliquary. We can say the word, but we shouldn't use it for this. Fear the reliquary when triggered when a creature touches. And a creature attacks or touches or damages the reliquary. The Lich can inspire fear in them that makes them unable to come near the reliquary. Yeah. So it's like, if you touch it, then rah, this is fear effect. Again, very dirty, very simple. I just wanted to quickly get it out there. Something that I will go and I will do when I sit down with the Lich someday, when I finally finish the demons and the devils and everything else I'm working on. I think that's it, everybody. I think that is our Lich. That was a bit of a slog. I appreciate everyone sticking with me this whole time. I think it's really cool, though. I think it reminds me of the Death Knight. Yeah, Hunter. I wasn't sure if you hadn't heard. So phylactery, it isn't an offensive word in and of itself, but it is a word that is heavily associated with Judaism. It's like an actual religious object that observing Jews, like, kind of, it's like a little box that you wear that has a bunch of scripture in it. And so it's like, I have seen a couple of Jewish creators that have expressed some concern and distaste over the use of the word because it is like inherently a negative thing, right? Like golem is also from Jewish mythology, but isn't such a big deal because there are lots of different interpretations of golems and stuff. But the phylactery is an important religious item to observant Jews, and it's a little weird to... Yeah, see, I didn't know either until I heard about it. So, like, it's just weird that they picked that. Like, it isn't a bad descriptor of what it used to be, but now the phylactery has become such a different thing for the Lich that it is in the actual religion. So I personally prefer the term reliquary. But people have used a vessel. I mean, I think at one point it was a jar as well. So people would say jar, but I think jar doesn't have the same gravitas. Yeah, it's something I had found out on Twitter, I think last year, the year before. So I'm trying not to use the term to specifically refer to the Lich. There's nothing wrong with the word. The word is fine. It's just, in this context, maybe we should stop calling it this actual, it would kind of be like calling it a crucifix or something. That might be offensive to a Christian, that kind of a thing. Great. But that is the Lich. It is a big chunky monster, but I think it should be a big chunky monster because it's yeah, exactly. Well, reliquary is specifically about like saints. It's not the same thing, I don't believe. And it usually just means like a holy artifact, kind of generically, as opposed to it being specifically an item that's only found in Judaism. But that's not necessarily, you're not necessarily wrong. Maybe that's something I should be looking into. Great. But that is the end of our stream. Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll be back hopefully on Saturday for some Sea of Thieves. If you are, I was also raised Catholic, and reliquary never came up, not once. If you are around on Saturday, we'll hopefully be not here, but on Twitch doing some Sea of Thieves streaming. That'll depend on what my schedule looks like. But otherwise, we should be back next week with some adventure prep. Hopefully, since today went better, the stream will be more stable, but we will see. If you like this stream, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you aren't already, go ahead and click the like button. Go ahead and check out the links below. You can find my Twitter and Patreon and all of that stuff down there. If you want to get access to this version of the Lich,
please consider subscribing to the Patreon, because that's sort of where a lot of these monsters end up after I get a chance to work through the backlog. If you're at $1, you get the monsters as they come out, but if you're at $5, then you get them when you get access to the Trove, which has all of the previous monsters that I have redesigned on there. But until then, thank you so much for coming, and I will be back hopefully this weekend, depending on how my Saturday looks, but definitely Tuesday. But until then, thanks for watching, and as always, happy adventuring.